Strawberry. I squint as I look at the twisting assortment of rock walls. Where does this strawberry come from? I look over to Grace, clad in a swimsuit. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much strawberry would you rate this? Grace, the embodiment of any, and thus unfazed by the fact my question really doesn't make any sense, thinks for a moment. 7. I nod solemnly. Fair enough. I guess Noah's right. The answer is always 7. I take a step into the hot mineral water and look up at the blazing mid-afternoon sun above me. Maybe it's called Strawberry Hot Springs because that's how everyone looks after sitting in them in the middle of the day. I take another 2 steps into the hot water. Why am I doing this? I look around at the other people in the hot spring. Almost all are only partially submerged because it's actually far too hot given the ambient temperature. I'm literally less comfortable in the hot springs than outside of them. Grace steps into the water beside me and blinks twice. Nope, she says resolutely, extracting herself from the water. Let's try that one over there. I follow her out of the pool. You are very wise. We walk over to the big pool and I take 2 steps in. The water is ice cold. On second thought, I take 2 steps out. I control Z your wisdom. What? Grace exclaims, taking a step in herself. She quickly puts herself back on dry land. Why? She whines, almost seeming to scold the water. Ugh. She throws her head back. Well, if we went to this one and then the other one, it would be the right temperature. I look for half a second at her. All right. With a surge of willpower, I throw myself into the snowmelt. The cold steals my breath away, and the sound of shock escapes my lips. Grace hesitates, seeing my reaction. This was your idea? I stutter, trying not to look as cold as I feel. Come on in. It's great. Grace does a little hyper still up dance, hesitates again, and then works up the nerve to begin wading into the water. A series of high-pitched girly sounds berate my ears until she finally submerges herself. I laugh. See? It's great. She glares at me. I can feel my fingers going numb. Hey, your idea. Her teeth chatter. I have an E. I nod, my teeth also chattering. Valid counterpoint. We sat there shivering for a few seconds. I'm done, Grace states resolutely and begins to make her way toward the stairs. Already? I chastise, sounding perfectly content. Yep. She begins to climb out of the frigid water. All right, fine, I state, trying to sound forlorn while secretly being immensely grateful to have an excuse to leave the horridly temperatured place. I follow her out. My numb toes bring me across the sun-baked rocks to the hot pool. Grace and I step into it and submerge ourselves. Hot! A series of little needles stab all over my body for a few seconds before eventually subsiding. Suddenly, the temperature feels lovely, like actually perfect. I look over to Grace, surprise written all over my expression. Wow, you were right. That actually worked. Grace closes one eye and strikes a Chica pose. Any? I chuckle and sink deeper into the hot spring. Nano! She rests into the hot spring as well. Sakamoto! And that's basically how Grace and I interact. Honestly, it's pretty great. We have a big bueno dynamic. Moving on, after the last stuffed meal, I woke up early because it turns out that 6 waffles drenched in syrup and a donut have way too much sugar content, and I know that because my stomach told me so. I then had a breakfast of salmon and rice. I know, I don't usually tell you what I eat, just that I eat. Aren't you so glad I've included this new level of information? I then worked on Life of Neil backlogging for some time, went to Wendy's, did Funime, read through the entire Wikipedia article on common misconceptions, which was very interesting, because I actually believed a lot of those. The article was shown to me by William, by the way. And then I picked up a girl whose name is Caroline and drove her to the party event that Noah was putting together on for Ratio, because she had no car. Once, at said lackluster party, I did a tiny bit of Little Spikeball, had some small talk, and then lost to Ethan in chess, because that man is just straight better than me at that game. I then went on to read philosophy, only to discover upon my arrival to my abode that Benj was bored. And I discovered this because I'm on a personal text thread basis with Benj. And he alerted me to this fact via that personal text thread. I know. Try and keep your envy contained. So upon Benj citing his boredom, I was like, all right, we'll figure something out. And so I started big thinking and came up with the following idea. What if we rented an electric scooter and grabbed dog leashes and attached those dog leashes to my belt, and then I pulled Grace and Benj on rollerblades via said dog leashes and electric scooter. The idea has since been canonized as certified a divine revelation because the fun that resulted and the fact that none of us died have both been confirmed as miracles. It was honestly super fun. We went around to Fort Collins for about 2 hours and then split the cost of the scooter, which was about $15 each. And it was great. Here's a picture Grace got. Oh, we also stopped by Ben and Caleb's house and ate some of their donuts, which were tasty. The morning that I arrived next, I did philosophy, some Funime, Life of Dino backlog recording, more philosophy, and then I talked with Emerson and Grace at Alley Cat for 3 hours. And apparently the notion of transcendence is not acceptable. They both had hardcore resistance to that notion. After that, I was supposed to go meet up with Noah and Catherine at the Waffle House in Timnath, so I started driving that way only to discover there is no Waffle House in Timnath, which I already suspected, but my trust for Noah's TI was greater than my trust in the extensive knowledge of the location of Waffle Houses I've acquired over the years. So I drove anyway. But yeah, Then Noah was like, we're going to be late by 30 minutes. So I killed time by buying body armors and gummy Skittles. I then drove to where the Waffle House actually was and proceeded to meet up with Noah and Catherine for some Waffle House food. And not going to lie, I definitely remember the Waffle House being better than it was. It was kind of trash. But regardless, I got to interrogate Catherine and discover her type, which is an ESFJ by my verdict. And then we journeyed out from that somewhat sketchy establishment to go stargaze at the stargazing spot. The drive up was mostly just me playing the songs I liked and singing along to them, which both Noah and Catherine seemed cool with. And then once we got there, instead of listening to music, because we listened to music on the whole way up, we conversed. It was a pretty good conversation. Catherine, like all ESFJs, didn't really vibe with the intuitive bent that I prefer, but she totally did dig the social analysis, and that's something I love doing. So I enjoyed that aspect of our conversation greatly. She has a very different perspective on the whole Southgate scenario than anyone else I've heard, so that was a very interesting insight. By far, the most interesting part of the conversation, though, was Catherine trying to explain to me what makes a guy feel, quote-unquote, safe. Because she mentioned that was one of the big things that attracted her to Noah. And frankly, that notion vexes me. Not that Catherine was attracted to Noah, mind you, but rather the notion of a guy feeling safe. Just, you all wanted to clarify that. First, it vexes me because I hate being judged based on some vibe that frankly I have no control over, and that's outside the rational realm. Well, actually, tangent. Let me hate on feelers for a moment, though particularly FE for a moment. Okay, so FE right. It slurps the emotional pheromones. Well, that's all well and good. You do you, FE users. But see, the super dumb part is when a vibe goes bad. And it doesn't have to be for a reason, mind you. It just has to not feel right. Then the FE users are just like, yeet. Don't get me wrong, FI users do this too, but at least they have the decency to take responsibility and introspect to see if it's a them problem first. Like, at least they're like, maybe the fact that things don't feel right says something about me and not the people around me. But the FE users, yeah, no. They're always like, well, they almost always go straight to, something's wrong with you, and then proceed to yeet. Basically, what I'm saying is what I dislike about feelers is the fact that they actually trust and make judgments upon just raw feelings. Like, they act as if feelings are trustworthy and, as if reasons are just a nice icing on the cake. Like, who does that? Okay, I see what I've done now. So what I'm saying is what I dislike about feelers is that they're not thinkers. Yes, Alex, what valuable insights. You really have picked out a fundamental flaw in these persons and haven't just projected your own personal preferences as objective standards onto which everyone else must abide. Good job. Here's a gold star. Okay, fine. But the point is, it bugs me. Feelings are dumb, and I personally and subjectively think you shouldn't trust them. And I'm also right. Okay, back to the point, though. The conversation about safeness was quite interesting and potentially insightful, and I appreciate it, though I continue to find its metrics quite vexing. And ambiguous, mind you. And yeah, once we got back, it was pretty late, so I went to sleep. The next day was Sunday, but the family decided to go on a trip to the hot springs, minus Ben, because he had to work. So we did that and did not go to church. We ate breakfast before leaving, and then we got on the road, and the drive was big, relaxing, very nice. I expressed my sentiments about long drives many times in these emails, so I will say no more. We stopped for burgers at this pretty cool restaurant, of which here's a picture. And yes, there are literally dollar bills covering the entire, every square inch of the walls, and it was pretty crazy, but pretty cool. The food was all right. My burger was basically disintegrating as soon as I tried to pick it up, so that was a bit bummer. But it tasted tasty, so, not bad. We then drove to the Strawberry Hot Springs and proceeded to immerse ourselves inside Hot Springs, as detailed in the intro. But, as also detailed in the intro, the hot springs were too hot or too cold, and Goldilocks would have had an existential crisis. So, once that ended, we went and got coffee, and the coffee shop we ended up going to was actually really, really cool. However, after consuming most of our beverages, I decided it would be smart to jump and hit a sign, because I felt like I could jump higher, and I was elated at this newfound prowess. It was a lie, though. I cannot jump higher, at all. I later tested myself against Joe, Bench, and Ben, and sucked. Rather, it is more likely I hadn't jumped in such a long time, because chemo, and then I just felt like I could jump high. Anyway, I jumped, hit the crosswalk sign, and then came down with my elbow on the wait button. Yeah, that was very significantly painful, and my elbow swelled and became more like a restricted leg log as the day progressed. And yeah, it was a bit of a big oof. We then drove back, and I got this picture. And then upon arriving back home, I found this blog called Mr. ENTJ, and he had some great inspiring quotes, so I slipped them up for my lines to live by. I watched some personality comedy videos, and then proceeded to spontaneously hit up Peter and hang out with him until 1:30 a.m. That was interesting, pretty decent time. But man, Peter has some whack music. Most I did not love, but there were a few total bangers in there, so I'm glad he introduced me to them. We then climbed Ben's Rock, which is just what I call it these days, and it was cool. And yeah, I enjoyed spending time with him. The next morning, I went to urgent care to see if I broke my elbow, and it turns out the answer is no, which was a big yay. But it took them a full 2 hours to bestow that information upon me, so that was not a big yay. I then went to Noodles with Dad and had a more heated discussion. I would classify it as an argument, but nevertheless, I think I handled it well. At no point was I emotionally upset, or just upset in general. So I don't know if you can have an argument with only one person being upset. I'll leave that to the TI users to figure out if that's possible. Anyway, not my ideal hangout, but what can you do? Conflict is a thing. As long as you act lovingly through it, then that's all there can be do. That's all that can be done. Once I got back, I worked on live video backlog recording before going to Monday night and eating food. We then systematically went through a super long activity list and weeded out things only to just do something that wasn't on the list anyway. Lesson learned. Probably not going to take that approach again. And the thing that was chosen was to get donuts and travel to Buc-ee's, the super gas station that has been erected and was all the rage the last month or so. So yeah, we found a sketchy donut shop, got donuts for big cheap, traveled to Buc-ee's, and ate the donuts as we looked around. And here's a picture of the establishment. And here's a picture of Ben discovering the clothes that reflect his soul. I feel like you can really see the inner tranquility in his expression right there. And yes, I did mean to say inner tranquility and not inner peace. I shall not expound. And yeah, it was okay. It was a big gas station, but what do you expect? Still, I'm glad I went, if for no other reason than to say I did. Once I got back, I read some more inspiring quotes from Mr. and TJ and then slept. The next morning, I did Foodame. I also got my epigenetics test results back, and they were honestly very lackluster, but basically it said as follows. Generic biological age, 24.5, aka a year older than I am. Hearing age, 15.7, aka my hearing is great. Eye age, 20 point something, so I guess a bit better than it should be. Memory age, 24.0. I forgot what to take away from this. The information was not worth it in my opinion, but you win some, you lose some. Anyway, good to know that my chemo regimen only sucked 1 year of my life away. I then had class, which I did, but in the middle of class, Neil called and was like, hey, so Sydney locked herself out of her car in Severance. Could you take me to deliver a key to her? Because, the Bowens only have one car. And so I was like, friendship duty calls. Unless I yeeted class and came to the Bowens house and went to their aid. It was an uneventful drive, mostly just music. Then, once I got home, I actually did homework outside of class, I think for the first time this whole semester. That tells you how much, I worked this semester. Not much. And then Peter dropped by and returned my MA water bottle, which was left in his car. Sorry, Peter, but you don't read these, so, that apology doesn't mean anything. From there, I went and did philosophy, studied spiral dynamics, did Foodame with Grace, and then Emerson and Mom and I... Oh, did Foodame, got you. I then finished my spiral dynamics book, big yay, and walked King Supers, listening to Personality Hacker, and when I arrived, I bought blackberries. I then walked over to CSU intending to spend time in their sauna, but I forgot my swim trunks, so I just took a shower instead. Honestly, probably about equivalent. During that time, I tried to implement the advice from Personality Hacker about ENTJ healthiness, and I think I managed the introspection decently. Once I got home, it was Foodame time, and then it was bedtime. So I, obliged by the laws of times and ordained by the fifth heavenly sphere, the same sphere that is responsible, in fact, for the tides, fertile crops, and human babies with pig heads. Albert the Great, to look it up. I thus rested. Upon waking, I engaged in the virtuous act of farming potatoes. Philosophy. I found myself and then proceeded to meet with Alexander. I remember him from way back at Ratio to discuss all the Catholic things for literally 3 hours. ENTPs, man, when they're not lazy, they slap. Hard part is, most often they're lazy. So yeah, he's like a living encyclopedia about Catholicism. He was actually able to answer my strongest objections, except for the divine simplicity one that I have accumulated over the years. A few of his answers were like, go read this, and this. But I don't doubt him. This man has actually read 30 books on papacy, so, oh my gosh. Very smart man. Anyway, mad respect, very good conversation. Definitely keeping him in my back pocket as a resource. And side fact, he also deeply appreciated the fact that I have very smart questions because he gets to know all the dumb ones. So I think I earned his respect as well. From there, I went home, had a conversation with Ben, played Spikeball for an hour and a half with Joe, Bench, and Ben. And once that ended, I did Spiral Dynamics reading and then watched some of an anime with Ben because he was still chilling on the couch when I researched for my room. And then I whiteboard fought with Alan for 2 hours, of which here is our customary picture. After that, I proceeded to have a headache. Not from the whiteboard fight, mind you. Alan's points were dumb at best. But the spike ball, because I didn't drink enough water. So yeah, due to that, I decided I would try and sleep it off, and so I went to bed early. The next morning, I woke up for class. I finagled with the homework test that I ordered, because I've been on a find all the ways in which I'm unhealthy spree. And, if there's a time to get medical stuff done, it's when I have, free time, and my deductible is fully paid. See, what can I say? Us ENTJs leverage even cancer. I'm not going to lie, complete medical free stuff is great. I'm not going to let this go by unutilized. Also, I got my diabetes test back, and I do not, in fact, have diabetes, most probably. So, yeah. But yeah, I couldn't get the homework test figured out, so I resigned myself to do that another day. I then had Foodame, went to class, did research, and, about what it would take to get my Divine Simplicity work published in a peer-reviewed journal. Because I had nothing else to do with my time at that point in time. I then did more classes, got home, and proceeded to study philosophy. From there, I had Foodame, did some spiral dynamics, debated online with some pedantic and uncharitable Thomists, watched 3 episodes of this epic anime called Solo Leveling, and that was great. And then I picked up Neo and took him to Thursday night where we played Diablo until 10:30. And then upon returning home, I reread the conversation I had with Sydney a while back, and honestly, I do not know what I could have done better. But regardless, because that's irregardless, because that's a word, and it means the same thing as regardless, which is dumb, I then went to sleep. The following day, I began with philosophical inquiry, did Foodame, worked on Life Dealing backlog recording, did more Foodame, read Spiral Dynamics, got my blood drawn to see how I was doing post-chemo, and yay, I'm no longer immunocompromised. I then did more Foodame, and then proceeded to go on my first run in ages. I got 9-minute miles, but what should I expect post-chemo? And yeah, definitely pushed myself too hard. I lost the feeling in both my feet. But I actually felt so good exercise running. It was like I was reclaiming control of an aspect of my life that had been wrenched from me. Honestly, very great feeling. Once I got back, I finished watching Solo Leveling with Mom. Again, a great anime. And then I read some more Spiral Dynamics stuff, worked on getting more backlog Life of the emails online, and then I slept. The morning began. That was next. with something of a routine for me. I read philosophy, did Funime, and then I worked on the hodgepodge of life dealing backlog of things. However, something novel that happened is that Jake and I got talking and decided it would be so much cooler to have our conversations while smoking pipes. So we both agreed to buy pipes and some non-tobacco based herbs to smoke. And thus I purchased myself a pipe. I shall show you a picture of it once it arrives, or actually figure out how to smoke it. But, excited to have the philosopher vibe while, not having the druggy downsides. Thereafter, Mom took Ben, Grace, and I to Howling Cows, a celebration for Grace getting a $1,000 scholarship for her trips to Ellerslie, because she's going to be doing that this summer. And then, once I got back, I read some more Smile Dynamics, worked on the Life Neo backlog, and then I went to go see Johanna's play. In the process, I may or may not have gone the wrong way on a one-way street, but we don't talk about that. And then once I got there, I mostly discovered they crowded theater with many people I knew. However, as previously discussed, my main objective was to sit next to Ben so we could cheer the actors on together. However, it turned out the seat I took was Sam's, so I asked him if I could have it anyway, and he was like, sure. And I later returned the favor by bestowing upon him an invisible hangout with me ticket. And I just now realized that effectively communicates that getting to be in my presence is a reward in and of itself, which is perhaps true, but does sound a touch arrogant. It's fine. He probably didn't interpret it that way. Probably. Anyway, the point is, Sam let me have his seat next to Ben, and it was great because that definitely made us have quite a few good cheering moments together. However, overall, I must say the play was actually so much better than anticipated, and thus the opportunity for mocking was limited. I was actually quite impressed. 8 out of 10 play. After that ended, I drove home, watched this anime about a post-apocalyptic AI who runs a post-apocalyptic planetarium. Yeah, I know. Anime is weird. And then I slept. The following morning, I attended church, because we do that. And then Jake and I left early to hang out and chat for like 4 hours or something. We got Smash Burger, and that was pretty good. A very good burger. And I really come to enjoy talking with Jake as of late. There's always like a stamina cap for me, though. Like, that 4-hour conversation, I was pretty worn out after. Still, it was a good conversation. After that, I walked to the city park, did some introspection, walked back, ate food, watched MBTI videos, which were hilarious, by the way. Gosh, some of those are so funny. Administered Psychology Junkies 14 Science articles to Mom because she was doubting her labels in ISFJ. She was like, are you sure I'm ISFJ? I'm like, probably. So yeah, I tested her for the ISFJ and the ISFP, the two potential types she could be, and she got the exact same score for both. So yeah, rip. Anyway, she's an ISFJ. Her SI is strong. It's evident. I then drove for an hour and a half to the mountains before talking with Noah and doing more driving, and that was a very good conversation. I got home at like 12:30 from that and went to sleep. The next morning, because I'm on a get healthy spree, took a hormone test, and the preliminary test showed my hormones were way out of whack. So, gonna get that checked out. From there, I did Funime, worked on Life Neo backlog recording, got a call from the place in Rock Springs that I got the internship, and while I was big tempted to say yes because they were offering me $26 instead of $21, which I thought the original offer was, after a few days of thought, I turned them down because as the plan stood, I had a number of trips happening over the summer, and I was going to get jacked. I mean, that's still kind of the plan, but there are now complications. So yeah, the cool thing is I managed to get the job, even if nothing came of it, and hence I felt accomplished. After that, I called Johanna and talked with her through a quandary she was having for like an hour, and then I read my Small Dynamics book, ate food, and reread the entire Misconceptions wiki, and then had D&D, in which my players finally lost in a combat I designed. They've been absolutely clapping all the monsters I put against them so far, so I decided to give them a real challenge for once. And from there, we watched the Blue Hawk episode and conversed with Neo about things on the way back, and then I talked with him in his driveway for like half an hour. And then I ate a bit of food and went to sleep. The following morning, I engaged my breakfast team, had classes, came home early, read through Spider Dynamics stuff, conversed with the Great Varley for 2 hours. Looks like there's a really good chance he's going to be flying to the States, by the way, in the winter, so I'm pumped about that. Did touch on philosophy, showed the family some funny personality videos, and then I wiped fought with Alan, of which I have a picture of our escapades. Once we finished warring, I did some research, and I got home and then rested my head on a pillow. The next morning began with philosophy, the morning routine, some research into the whack results for my hormone test and what they likely mean, working on my Life Neo backlog, studying Spiral Dynamics, and met up with Sam so I could cash his invisible ticket. It was decided on my way to return Sam kindness that we would go to the Windsor Rec Center, and I would get him a Wendy's meal. Hence, we did that, and we spontaneously ended up including Benj and Johanna, and so we all did our max outs together for the Getting Jack competition, during which I utterly failed and was completely destroyed by Benj. My tea kind of died as Benj wiped the floor with me. I've actually had like some ridiculous muscle atrophy from chemo and become mega weak. Like, I could only bench like 135 pounds, and for comparison, while on the trip, without any training, I could bench 180. So, yeah, it's bad. Basically, all my metrics were like that. But hey, most improved, here I come. So yeah, after we all did that, we went swimming, only to go down the slide literally once before we were like, no more slide for you. And for absolutely no reason, mind you. It was big lame. Hence, we sat in the hot tubs for a while, talked about nothing of significance, and then we left because Johanna had to go to church thing to do, and honestly, there's no point in staying. After I dropped Benj and Johanna back off their house, I took Sam out for Wendy's, and we got to have a good conversation. Sam is just starting to become an interesting, independent human. Hitting that stage 3, baby. So I'm excited. It was a good conversation. I felt like I got to know Sam a bit better. And then I came home and read the Spiral Dynamics book, did some Life of Neil backlogs, only to discover Emerson and Natalie had come over. Apparently, those two and Grace had concocted a cool "let's drive to California" plan in which they wanted me to be their resident adult, in which I was totally down for. So we brainstormed the logistics of the whole idea for a few hours, only for the idea to then get the parental nope the next day. So that was rip. But, anyway, it was a good conversation. The next morning, I had Funime, classes, and a monumental thing occurred. Namely, I finished the Life of Neil backlogs. Woo! Party cannons go off, and confetti rains from the sky. That was an undertaking, I must say. I re-recorded all 72 Life of Neil emails and then uploaded them and all of the original audio to both Spotify and YouTube for your listening pleasure. So, to listen from the start to the finish, through all the Life of Neil, for all the re-recorded backlog, should take about 36 hours. And a significant amount longer if you listen to the original recordings, I must say. But it's totally worth it, because the 10 or so Life of Neil emails that Joe edited, I think like Life of Neil 35 through 45 or something like that. Oh, it's like 33 to 35. They're peak. Honestly, the golden era of Life of Deeds. So if you're going to listen to any, I recommend starting with those. So yeah, in total, I've written 530,000 words in Life of Deeds. And for comparison, that is almost as long as the entirety of the Lord of the Rings books, including The Hobbit. All of which add up to be about 576,000 words, to be precise. So yeah, I've written a chunk of text over the years. My goal is to surpass the length of Aquinas' Summa at 1.8 million words. Watch me. Anyway, all that to say, it was an undertaking. It's a bit of an undertaking to listen to all the Life dates, but also totally possible. Just put on Life Dates while you're driving, and boom, easy win. And to be fair, I mostly re-recorded them for my own sake, because I completely forgot about the past and had so many misconceptions about it. But regardless, if people listen to them, that would make me happy. So you should do it if you're bored or have long drives. The other mildly interesting thing that I learned from that enormous sampling process, or that enormous process, is I have a speaking pace of 244 words per minute precisely. And given the sample size, I would be, pretty confident that's exactly my speaking pace. Hence, since the average speaking rate is around 140 words per minute, that means I functionally do speak at 1.75 speed. Now I understand why people say I talk fast. But honestly, I just speak as fast as I think. And that's why I started speaking as fast as I do in the first place, because I got annoyed that, my words would have to wait for my brain. My brain would have to wait for my words to catch up. So I wonder if that means I think at 1.5 speed. Who's to say? Anyway, I just thought it was cool to quantify my speaking rate compared to the average person in the populace. And yeah, it took me ages to get through all that, but they're finally done, and I feel accomplished. After that, I watched personality skits with the fam and ate food. I know, breaking my usual anime tradition, but Dear Christian has some seriously good personality things in there. And then I made a meal out of meat. Because my PET scan was in the morrow, and I attended a birthday celebration for Neo till 12:30. The next day, I woke up early for my PET scan, drove all the way to Longmont, and then lay in a whirling tube. Upon emerging from the whirling tube, I then discovered my phone had gone into a refuse to start up mode, and hence I winged it and tried to get home just by memory, and I didn't make a single wrong turn. Don't get me wrong, there were quite a few points where I was like, did I really come this way? But the answer was always, yep, and I'm awesome. So yeah, apparently, I just subconsciously keep track of where I travel, and I was able to make it back home without any maps from a place I'd never been to, and when I wasn't supposedly paying attention. So woo, go me. Once I got back, I did Funime, worked on Spiral Dynamics stuff, and then I got the PET scan results back. Hence, the emotive dark ages. Yet, for you to understand why what followed warranted the emotive dark ages title, let me now include the cancer update. Alright, so basically after I got the PET scan results, I sent out an email to you all telling you that I still had cancer and surveying the suffrage of chemo that is to come. And don't get me wrong, that's all bad, but it's also just pain, and pain is temporary. I agree with Wesley. So it's to be torture. Cancer nods his head vigorously. I can cope with torture. Cancer shakes his head vigorously. Okay, complete side tangent, but I pulled that quote from a doc of mine that's I kid you not, 6 years old. Back when I was 16, I wrote down basically every line of The Princess Bride by hand as I watched the movie 3 times over. I was a strange lad. Anyway, the point is, adversity per se doesn't get me down, but unfortunately, it's not just suffering that awaits me. Even if I undergo salvage chemo, the odds it actually works are quite low. Here is what one of the peer-reviewed studies I found gave for my odds. Patients who relapse after chemotherapy have about a 20% cure rate with conventional salvage chemotherapy. And I will say my own calculations derived from other peer-reviewed papers about the odds of complete remission or a partial response from salvage, and hence the composite probability of subsequent stem cell transplant bringing about complete remission rates range from about 16% to 25% based on the salvage therapy used and some other factors. Hence, 20% seems to be approximately correct. Also, my AI gave the same verdict. So yeah, from this point on, the odds I actually get better are pretty darn low. The worst part is, even if I do achieve complete remission, my organs sustain so much damage from the chemo process, it's unlikely I will live past 40. Only about 30 to 40% of patients who had achieved complete remission get another 15 years of life. Thus, according to the established treatment plan, I have an 80% chance of dying in the next few years, and even if I beat those odds, the overall lifespan of my life is cut in half. Not to mention the quality of life things from all my organs being eaten, I'll probably be, even if I'm alive, I will probably have organ failure, or at least deficiencies in some ways. There's also a 70% chance I suffer some mental damage, either brain fog, the inability to pay attention, memory issues, or something like that. And a 20 or so percent chance I develop severe or debilitating neuropathy that lasts for years or is permanent, which would also basically immobilize me. Anyway, basically the point is there is no happy ending from this point on. Okay, well, that's not true. There could be a happy ending where everything is fine, but that's really unlikely. Either I die in a few years or I die in about 15. But either way, by all accounts of probability, cancer or the treatment thereof is going to kill me. And not going to lie, that realization is pretty disheartening. Hence, in the few days that followed, I probably felt the worst I felt in my life and what I would deem full-on depressed, as opposed to my previous baby depressed state. As soon as I got the PET scan results back, I talked about what they meant with Mom and Ben, and that was quite rough. I then went on a drive, put on my tragic playlist, and proceeded to cry and pray before going to the doctor with Alan, and there my understanding of the situation was confirmed. Once I got back, I bought myself some constellation noodles and tried to be cheery, but honestly, I could not pull it off, which is saying something because my ability to override my emotive states with sheer force of will is immense. Then that night, I walked barefoot with Mom around CSU and discussed cancer stuff before going back home, doing research, and going to sleep. It was at this point that I switched into like full-on cancer research mode, because until now, since ABVD had such a good odds of curing me, I didn't think it was really worth my time. But at this point, it's become clear that given imminent death, it is now very much worth my time. So yeah, did cancer research that morning. It worked out. Also, as a side tangent, I worked out at NF because, well, I finally identified with his music now. And then I did more cancer research until that evening when Grace, seeing I was very down, offered taking me on a drive where I just listened to Owl City music and didn't have to talk. And honestly, that was super kind of her and very much needed. We drove through Risk Canyon as it was snowing. It was pretty great. I got a picture here. Once I got home, I tried to take my mind off things by watching an anime movie, and that kind of worked. From there, I spontaneously was invited to go watch Eliana Macy's school play with Grace, and since I couldn't muster the willpower to do basically anything else, I decided to go. It was honestly a very good play. Very well done. Only a temporary distraction, and while, it did make me feel a little better, it did not by any means make me feel good. Sunday, I really did not want to go to church because of my emotional state, but I forced myself to go anyway because I knew it would be good for me, and so I went and was just garbage socially. I was basically a sad brick in the corner. But I went nevertheless. Afterwards, Ben agreed to play some table tennis, and honestly, that got me feeling a lot better. There's something about good physical activity with a close friend that can really pull you out of the dumps. However, once I got home from that, Dad came back from whatever country he was in, and hence I had to describe the whole situation over again to him, and end up also expounding upon the details based on the research I'd done, which were even worse than I thought they were before. So that put me back into a depressed state. I then went on another drive and cried as well, and then prayed some more. Once I got back, it was more cancer research until late, at which point I checked to see if Joe was available because I just really needed some company. He said he was, and so he got to my house around 10:30, and we went on a drive together. And it was at this point that I thought I was done crying. I thought I'd worked it out of me. But as I caught Joe up on everything and my imminent death, I found out I was apparently wrong. I just straight up sobbed. I think I've cried like that once before, and certainly never in front of anyone else. So I tried to stop it, but I actually just couldn't. Turns out Q has nothing on impending death. So yeah, the fact that I'm most likely going to die fully hit me then, and it turns out that was enough to break me. Who would have thunk? It was a very hard drive, but also a very freeing one. By no means what I intended, but almost certainly what I needed. Just as a meta point, this is definitely the hardest thing I've gone through yet in my life, and the all too likely prospect of not having a future is pretty devastating for me. I've spent so much of my life investing in the future and not taking immediate gratification that was available to me, so the fact that I'll likely never see the payoff is really, really hard. Anyway, all that to say, on that drive, the reality of my situation really sunk in, and I think I was able to really grieve it as well as come to accept it. I'm also immensely thankful that if I, had to break down in front of someone, it was Joe. We finished that drive at about 1 a.m, and I went to sleep. And looking back, I would say that marks the end of my proper depression. Also, I've got to just say that if any of you haven't written me a letter yet, or even if you have, and if you'd just be willing to rewrite me another one, around now is when I can certainly use them. So please, if you're willing to do that, do it. It turns out dying is a lot harder than I thought to hack emotionally, and frankly, I think I actually need the emotional support. And yes, expressing emotional needs still feels like a weakness, and I hate it, but what the heck, I'm literally dying from cancer. So if I gotta be weak about something, I suppose this should make the cut. However, all that said, from this point on, my ruthless optimism does begin to kick back in, so fear not, I'm not secretly mopey and just trying to put on a brave face. I'm actually feeling a lot better now. So I've come to terms with the fact that I'm probably gonna die, and I've decided if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die excellently. Watch me. And hey, maybe I won't die. Maybe I'll hit those low odds, or maybe God is a miracle, and who's to say? Either way, I'm not going to waste the next few years of my life being salty that I might not have more. How dumb is an idea that? How dumb of an idea is that? As of late, I've been inspired by a quote from your line in April that goes something like, "If you live life right, life until now is enough." And I genuinely think that's true. Granted, enough certainly isn't the ideal metric for success, and you better bet I'm not just going to take this laying down. But if this is God's plan, I'm going to make sure to live as much as I can, and as well as I can, so that until now really is enough. So yeah, I don't need you to baby me or give me special treatment going forward. I'll be salty if you do. However, if you could express sad emotions in a letter, even if you wrote me one before, that would be fantastic. Probably don't express how you feel to my face, as I won't know how to handle it. And besides, I need to save the really a potent emotional reactions for when I'm for real on my deathbed. Can't get desensitized too soon. Hence, with all that established, I shall officially deem the cancer update over, and hence the life update shall resume. The next morning, I wasn't feeling great emotionally, but Ben had gifted me a Lego set that was a congrats on getting through cancer gift. So, But building that was still, bittersweet. It was nevertheless a very thoughtful gift. As he sent, he got me a set from my childhood, the Mars Mission Claw Tank. Here's a picture of it. And I swear, Lego peaked with Mars Mission. Actually, some of the best sets ever. Anyway, it was a really cool gift, and I was happy to build it, even if the occasion no longer warranted it. After I finished making that, I did cancer research. Funime went to Mugs and talked with Becky Dawson, and honestly, that talk was huge because she convinced me to actually give the time of day to this How to Starve Cancer book, which has influenced me significantly enough that I'm probably going to try its methods before taking the traditional science route. I think the science of these off-label drugs is probably legit, we'll see. I mean, it might be whack, but yeah. If there's a route which, has success, it doesn't mean cutting my lifespan in half. I'm going to at least try it. So yeah, that talk was huge, and I walked away feeling a bit more hopeful emotionally. Once I got home, I did more cancer worship. I did more cancer research. Worked out at CSU's gym, did Funime, and then did Monday Night, which consists of a YouTube compilation, which was honestly pretty great, and then a citywide speed seek game, which was also pretty great. Though Grace's fleeing skills are much more questionable than first anticipated. Also, we had some really vexing technical difficulties regarding location stuff, so that also put a damper on things. But still, overall, very good. The next day, I did Funime, had some classes, did more Funime, went over to the Myers house, and played table tennis with Seth as we waited for Sam to finish mowing. Seth's gotten a lot better since I last played him. And then we drove in Benji's car, woot woot, to the Chilson Center, where Grace, Sam, Benj, and I all played racquetball for 2 hours, and then Karina, Joe, and Johanna, Lily, and Seth all joined us for a few hours to spend some time in the pool. However, let's be honest, we spent most of the time on the slide. See, they have this slide at the Chilson Center, and I mean, it's alright, it's a decent slide. But what made it fun was the challenge we concocted to try and reach the end of the slide's buffer zone, which is a lot harder than you might think. And so, with much iterations and water up our noses, Joe finally achieved the goal as his toes gently bumped against the end of the slide. It was glorious. After spending some time in the hot tub, we then went back to Myers and ate their food. Thanks, Myers. I then had a Rubik's Cube showdown with Sam and was quite close in the overall win-loss ratio, but in the last round, he destroyed me and thus took the overall win. I'm not salty or competitive. That was a very good time. From there, Grace drove us home as we were in her car, and I watched some YouTube videos before going to bed. The next morning consisted of cancer study, Funime, then more cancer study, till I was recruited by Grace and Emerson to type Jack, this lovely man. After a distracted interrogation, I deem him an ESTP, which, doesn't bode super well for Emerson as she's an INFP. Hence, I was like, X-nay on the relationship questions, A. And Emerson picked up what I was laying down and hence did not inquire about their compatibility at the time of the personality diagnosis. The rest of the night was spent with some semi-awkward small talk and some trivial interactions, which I stuck it out through until bed. The next morning, I ate pineapple and watched anime. I did eat pineapple, and yes, that is significant. Not really. I don't know why I told you that. I then attended my last day of classes, did some cancer research, drove to Windsor for my surgery appointment to schedule my surgery appointment, at which point they told me that I would need to acquire another appointment for this doctor was incapable of performing my surgery. I then got home, talked with Noah, and we walked over to City Park and back. And then once that elapsed, I ate some super healthy food as I watched YouTube and journeyed with Neo to Thursday night where we played Lord of the Rings Conquest, then Halo, then Diablo, which I did surprisingly well in the first two cases. I then talked with Neo before dropping him off and going to sleep. The next morning was more cancer research. I vacuumed my car, talking with Joe and Karina at Qdoba. I vacuumed my car, then went and talked with Joe and Karina at Qdoba. Joe is having all these orange moments, and it makes me very happy. I then drove with Karina through the canyon and had a very good conversation. Once we got back from that, I did more cancer research and watched Pilgrim's Progress play for a second time, because I watched it all those years back, and I still think the demons are just peak demons. I then engaged in some awkward social interaction with the LMT people, though I met Elijah, and he seemed cool, before working out and sleeping. Saturday, I woke up, did cancer research, ate food, and then I met with Emerson and Grace at a little bit to talk about Emerson's romantic compatibility with Jack. See, Emerson is an INFP, so you have to say things, so you have to say, the person you like probably isn't great for you in a very particular way, lest the INFP yeet your advice further than the east is from the west. And, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying INFPs, ESTP combo can't work. I mean, Caleb and Rebecca are still together, technically. It's just that, there are some significant challenges. So, yeah, I gave her the pros and cons, and we'll see if she uses that information. I'm glad I got to talk with her about it. Once I wrapped up, I got home, did some more cancer research before going over with Grace to do singing lessons with Rowan, which now includes both Emerson and Natalie, which I don't mind, save the fact that it means less personalized time for me and Grace. Here's a picture of that. After that, we went out for noodles, save Emerson, she had somewhere to be, and we talked, and that was good. I then brought Rowan back, Well, yeah, I did bring Rowan back because I was in Grace's car. Anyway, I then brought Rowan back, and then Grace, Adelaide, and I all hopped in her car and journeyed once more to the radio towers. And on that drive, I got to break down to Adelaide how to handle emotions and her inferior FE as an INTP. And I thought that was an excellent conversation. Like, man, I wish I had some oldish, wise, not ish, very wise, thinking, no, I'm sorry, I need to tone up the areas. Some oldish, wise, thinking, dominant guy who was able to do that for me when I was 17. Because, gosh, inferior emotions suck. A sentiment that Adelaide clearly shared. So yeah, I think that conversation really impacted her and made my green very happy. Once we got back, I went on a walk and called Jordan, caught up, and it was good, and then I slept. Saturday was basically all social stuff. I went to church, socialized at lunch bunch, and also heard The Great Tale of Beth, did D&D, ate food, and then played Halo 2 with Neo on the hardest possible difficulty for 6 hours in an attempt to finally beat the game. We did not succeed, but we made progress. Also, completely unrelated, but at some point in time, me and Jake sat down on the front porch and smoked our newfound pipes. I guess that event got lost in the aether, but, it happened, and here's a picture. Honestly, keeping a pipe lit is much more work than you might think. Also a bit challenging. Still, I love the reform vibe, and Jake and I plan to do it again sometime soon. Plus, I've got no interest, so we might start a pipe smoking club. Also, just in case it wasn't clear, we are smoking herbs, not tobacco, for all those concerned. Back into the chronological order of things, I woke up, ate breakfast, took my journalism final, and ended up getting not cresting the A range, so I got a B plus in that class, which was sad. Overall, I got 2 B pluses and 1 solid A, so not great as far as grades go, but given I put in so little effort that it's not even funny, it's pretty impressive nonetheless. Those classes were so easy. I then started reading this book that Alan gave me, and it was garbage, so I ceased to read it around 70 pages in. I then did more cancer research, had my for Risley surgery appointment, played Spikeball with Benj, Joe, and Sam, and that was big fun. Benj and my Way of the Fist style is on point. I then just sat a bit before heading over to Neo's and playing Halo with him till midnight. The next morning I fasted, did cancer research, scheduling a meeting with various alternative oncologists, and then proceeded to be sliced open. And gotta say, it wasn't even nervous for this surgery, because I've done this before. And, when you have death and surgery is not very scary. However, I did ask for particular tests on the tumor, and they refused to give them to me, so that was a big dump. Once I got back, I was on narcotics, and thus not big-brained, and so I just watched anime and went to bed early. The next morning, I noticed my eyebrows were starting to grow back. Yay! Eyebrows. And then I so much mac and cheese and watched anime and worked on this live demo, and then I talked with Michael for an hour. I literally have to block out 2-hour chunks of time whenever I talk to this man, because he will talk for ages. I got my blood taken for some hormone testing, did some live email work, and then Morgan came over and I discovered she is green with a bit of orange, and hence the only confirmed person with green, other than myself, that I know of. Not only that, but she's also a third step further along the spiral than I am, so the only person more advanced than me. Oh, great sensei. So yeah, that was exciting, and we moved, and we mourned the rack of green people in our lives, and then we talked about how we think orange people are cool, and we like them. It was like a 4-hour talk, and it was great. Once that ended, I decided to yeet all the pain meds and sleep. The next morning was, as you might expect, I was in some pain because I needed the pain meds, but it was tolerable. I did cancer research and then talked with Amelia for 2.5 hours about many things, and now that Amelia is healthy, she's actually a fantastic conversation partner. Healthy INFJ is just the best. I then finished the FI Anime of Death, gosh that was painful, and proceeded to attend Thursday night and play Diablo into the night. Friday I did so much cancer research. I finished the most important part of How to Starve Cancer book and took some functional notes. I then went over to Noah's house and attended his end of the year ratio party, which was pretty meh, but I got to see Alan, so it was nice. And then I left and found this, which is a car very closely parked to me. And even though it made trying to get out of my spot immensely painful because I parked close to the guy behind me as well, I wasn't even salty because, look how close that is. Clearly this guy was immensely skilled, or he just got lucky. So yeah, that's certainly the closest anyone's ever parked to me, and I was very impressed. Once I finally wiggled my way out of that parking spot, it took ages, and I'm really glad I did not hit anybody. I then started reading a paper that a friend of Dad sent him on the same lines of thought of the How to Starve Cancer book, and it was excellent. A most fantastic resource, and things are really starting to make sense and click, so I'm very excited. So yeah, with all that, I slept. Next morning consisted of cancer research. We're going over to Neo's house for Alan's graduation party. He just finished his chemistry degree, so that's a big yay. And it was a fairly lame party, but not gonna lie. But I was glad I showed up because it seemed to mean something to him. And also the hacky sack was fun. Once I got back from there, it was more cancer research. Grace, Katie, and Emerson then left for prom, of which here's a picture of them in their prom dresses. I then went to Tokyo Joe's with Mom and Dad for food and just to update them on everything cancer related, and that went well. Once I got home, I had a headache, so I wasn't super productive. But before too long, Grace stopped by, and me, her, and Katie carpooled to meet up with Emerson and Jack at Canes. And apparently becoming an Orthodox catechumen from Catholicism was something that Katie was doing, so I was quite interested in that conversation. At Canes, the only notable occurrence was somehow Katie got cane sauce in Emerson's eye. I honestly do not know how that happened, or if it was even Katie or Emerson's fault, or both. Emerson is notoriously clumsy. I've seen her trip on air numerous times. So the classic, you hit my fist with your face idiom might actually be true in this case. Regardless, it seems pretty painful to have cane sauce in your eyes, so it wasn't all that funny for that reason. From there, we went up to the radio towers and then back. The drive was all right, just listening to music and singing along. The drive felt super long, though, but it could have been because I was middle-seated. So yeah, we Tried to see the alleged Northern Lights, but there was nothing to see, so that was disappointing. And I got to bed around 2:30. That was a pretty late night. The next morning, I did not go to the Southgate service because I was very tired. But I did arrive for lunch bunch, only to discover that most of the people from Southgate were not attending said lunch bunch, so I journeyed with them to Qdoba instead. At Qdoba, I was green, and then went to the Myers house and found a good way to play 6-person spike ball, which was a lot of fun. Oh, I also sold my mega bags of protein powder to Sam and Joe, because apparently IGF-1 is a super big cancer food, so a little whey powder. Once I got home, I finished reading through the most excellent resource I've found so far. My dad's friend actually brought to his attention, and thus he brought to my attention. And oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful document in existence. If you know anyone fighting cancer that's not me, you actually have to share this with them because this may legit save their life, and we'll see if it can save mine. Anyway, finished that 150-page beauty. I then spent the time after that with my family, not realize it was Mother's Day, but we'll call it a Mother's Day thing, for a few hours before leaving to go on a walk with Jake, only for him to push back our time for the walk by an hour, and so I was already at his house. So I was like, well, I'm already driving. So instead I went on a night drive for an hour with a brief stop back at home while listening through the songs that Celia recommended to me. She apparently likes rock, and they all had like a very similar vibe, which I mean wasn't my favorite, but not the worst. I then met with Jake for realsies. We heated our shoes and then proceeded to walk barefoot for 2.5 hours around Fort Collins. And we visited my/Myers' old house, which was nostalgic. We then had a very good conversation. Probably the best conversation I've had with Jake yet. Also, he's for sure in stage 4, and it's very interesting to see how that looks and compare it to my stage 4. Monday morning, aka yesterday, I did a bit of cancer research, but then I got one of my test results back, and it says I didn't have Hodgkin's, so I got mega hopeful and couldn't focus until I got a call from my oncologist. And that's a cruel thing, by the way, getting a test result that's like, everything's fine! Because try as you might, hope really does thrive under such conditions. But no, I got a call from my oncologist a few hours later saying the lab did indeed confirm I had cancer. So that means my not cancer result must have been for the second healthy lymph node they took out of me. So yeah, that was a rip, but 100% what I expected. So not really crushing by any means. I then started contacting everyone that I thought might be interested in a hostage game that I decided to organize. And basically the idea of the game is that you have a number of teams, the number determined by how many people show up and how many people want to be hostages. And each team has one of their team members be taken as a hostage by the other team. And they also take, some other team members hostage. Then each team binds and blinds their hostage they've acquired and drives them out somewhere in the city and drops them off. It's then a race to see which team can reclaim their hostage before the others. That's the gist of the game. There's more to it, and we changed some things up, but that's basically how it went. Not gonna lie, a lot of people showed up. In the end, counting myself, we had 29 people who attended, so it was a pretty big crowd. I had to yell and do some crowd management, but honestly, that stuff kind of exhilarates me. Organizing big events and taking charge to make sure everyone has a good time just makes me excited. Lol, TE dominant. So yeah, I actually loved it. I got to see a lot of my friends show up, and it was, as well as a few people I didn't know, and I'm not going to list everyone that came, because that would actually be a pain. But it was good. Also, Peter in a banana costume, peak. So yeah, the first round was super short, and that's kind of a bust, but the second round was pretty good. We had a lot of confusion about things, and that's the team that won kind of won on technicality, but it was still very fun. Everyone I heard from said they had a great time, so the event was a smashing success. Also, Joe and Benj were very helpful, so they get some credit too. And yeah, that wrapped up around 11 at night, and I went home and then sent out some thanks for coming text and slept. And now here we are. Tuesday morning is upon me. I've completed this live email. And I know this one's bigger, both in length and in time coming, but I had to wait to send it out until I got the official results from my biopsy, and hence the email's timing. And yeah, got it done. As of late, I've become fond of a new phrase, and seeing as the not dead yet phrase may not apply in a few years, I'm thinking I'm going to include it into the repertoire. Watch me.